Hello, you wonderful people. I'm excited for our second video in our Next.js Epic course series. I hope you're excited. In this video, we're going to take a look how to build out our hero section in our landing page. Let's see how far we get in this video. By the way, this video has a supplementary blog post that you could use as reference. I was going to point out, but it's actually going to be the first link in the description below. So if you see me typing and you need a code snippet, check out that blog post. But without any ado, let's jump right into it. This is going to be our part 2 of our Epic Next.js course. If you missed the first one, I'll make sure to link to the video here above. You could also check out the previous article that we wrote. And as you're following along the video, I am releasing these blog posts to make sure that you have supplementary content, or if you see me type something and you're not sure where to find the code snippets, you'll be able to use the reference article here as reference. And if you missed the project, you could check it out on our repo. If you take a look under the branch, and here in the main, you will see the current changes up to the date of the tutorial, but you'll be also able to see the individual changes that we accomplished based on the tutorial. So today, before starting the course, I'm going to make sure to create a new branch for us to continue. So let me go ahead and do that first. So I'm going to create a branch called O2 lesson hero section. Sounds good. And I'm going to check out that branch. And I'm going to say get push up origin O2 hero section. So this way, when we take a look at our repo, we're going to see we have the newly created branch where all of our changes are going to go in today. So I'm going to clear my screen. I'm going to cd into our backend and run yarn develop so we could see where we are. Then in a different tab, I'm going to cd into our front end, and I'm going to open it in VS Code. And I'm going to start our project to see where we left off. So taking a look at our project, not eventful at all. And if we take a look in our source code, app inside page, this is where we're getting our initial data, and we're just showing the title and the description. And that's coming from our Strapi application. And since you're not using this button, let's go ahead and delete this import for now. So this is what our hero section looks like. So the first thing we want to do is structure our content in Strapi. We're going to start by building out this component. As you could see here, we have our background image, which is going to be our image. We have our summarize your videos, which is going to be our heading. We have save time and get key points from videos, which is going to be a subheading, and then we have a link. So now let's take a look in Strapi how we could create a component to represent this data. So here in Strapi, there's many different ways to represent our content. If you look at our content type builder, we could create a new collection type when you have, let's say, a post, users data, products, many items of, you could represent with a collection. You also have our single types. For instance, we have our homepage. So our homepage currently just has a title and a description. We want to add another section to be able to represent our hero section and our feature section. And we could accomplish this by creating a dynamic zone. But before we could do that, let's create our hero section component in Strapi to represent that data. So let's go ahead, click on create new component, and we're going to call it hero section. We're going to add a category here called layout. Since it doesn't exist, click on create layout and click continue. Our hero section is going to have our heading text. Let's make it short text and add another field. Again, let's use our text field. And this is going to be our subheading. And we're going to make it long text, add another field. And finally, we're going to go ahead and add an image, which is going to be our media. We're going to call it image, and we're going to go to advanced settings, make sure that we only allow images, and back to our basic settings. And since you're going to have one image, let's just click single media and click finish. Taking a look at our view, you see that we have this link button. We could actually create another component for our link. So let's do that now. We could either continue it here, or we could click save and click create new component and do it this way as well. So I'm going to call it the link, and we're going to create a new group called components. Click create and click continue. Our link is going to have a text field. We're going to call it URL, and it's going to be short text. Next, we're going to add another field. Again, it's going to be a text field. We're going to keep it a short text, and we're going to say text, and we're going to create another field, and it's going to be a Boolean, and it's going to be called internal. For instance, is the link internal to our website, or is it an external source like YouTube? We want to be able to tell the difference. And I'm going to go to advanced settings, and for our Boolean field, we're going to mark it as false by default, and click finish and save. Finally, let's navigate to our hero section component, and let's add our link. We're going to add another field. We're going to go down to our components. We're going to say use existing components and click select component. We're going to just have one link on our hero section, so let's select single component. We're going to give it a name link, and we're going to select our component and click finish. Make sure you save your data. So now our hero section has our heading, subheading, image, and our link. Great, we are able to store our data. But how do we use this in our page? So let's take a look. Clicking on our homepage, we're going to add another field, and we're going to select dynamic zones. This will allow us to select components that we want to include. We're going to call this blocks and click add component to the zone. We're going to say use existing component, and we're going to select our hero section and click finish. Now as we save, we're going to see that our homepage now has our title, description, and our blocks. Now before continuing, let's go to our content manager under homepage and add our newly created hero section. I'm going to say hero section, and for the heading, I'm going to say Epic Next, and subheading, I'm going to say you are all are awesome, because you are. And for an image, I'm going to find an image on my computer that's random. Why not add the image of our hero section, click upload and finish. And finally, I'm going to add a link, and we're going to make this link take us to our login page and click save. So now let's test out our endpoint to make sure that we're getting our data. I'm going to go into settings, under roles, under public. I'm going to make sure that our homepage has the find permission enabled. And let me zoom out just a tiny bit. And here we could see the endpoint to which we want to make a GET request to see our data. I want to make sure that I save first. So I'm going to go ahead and make a GET request to our endpoint. And when I click send, notice we have our data. But wait, we're not getting or seeing our blocks or our hero section. What could be happening here? So when using Strapi, when we take a look at our homepage data, any first level fields or our top level fields you get by default. That's why when we make an API request, we're getting our title and our description. But to get the rest of the data, to make sure that we don't impact performance, we have to tell Strapi exactly what we want to get. So we want to get the blocks, and that will automatically return the first level fields here. But we also want to populate our image and our link. And we could do this with our populate flag. You can learn more about in the docs, but we're going to use our dandy query builder tool that we have here on the Strapi docs website. Here, I'm going to say that we want to look up our home page endpoint, and I'm just going to clean all this up, and we're going to go ahead and write our query. So what this says, I want to populate my blocks, and within my blocks, I want to populate the image and only return the URL fields and alternative text, and I want to populate all the items with the links. And we get this nice LHS syntax query string that we could use in Insomnia. So again, looking at this query, what we're telling Strapi is to go ahead and populate our blocks, and within our blocks, populate our image and our links. So now if we paste it in here and make sure there's no space and click send, notice now we're getting all of our data here in Insomnia. Now that we know that we could get our data from our Strapi project, let's go ahead inside our Next.js project and write a function that's going to get all of this data that can be consumed by our hero section component. Taking a look here at our code here that we previously wrote, we're getting just our title and description, but we need to tell Strapi that we want to populate our blocks, including our hero section. To help us to accomplish this in Strapi, we're going to use an NPM library called QS. It allows us to take our object notation and convert it into this URL string that we could pass in our request. So first things first, I'm going to stop my server, add the QS library by running yarn add QS. Once the library is installed, I'm going to clear the screen and I'm going to install its types. Add types QS. Once everything is done, let's run yarn dev to start our application again. And here, right above our get Strapi data, we're going to import our QS library. And then we're going to create a new const to hold our query. We're going to call it homepage query. And it's going to be that same object that we created using the Strapi query builder. So I'm going to go ahead and paste the previous code here. So let's take it here, populate, control copy, and we're going to paste it inside our object notation. Perfect. And now we're going to reconstruct the base URL here, and we're going to use another useful class that you could read more about in MDN docs, which is this new URL constructor, which takes a URL path, the base, and has additional methods that we could use, like being able to pass search. You can read more about it on MDN, but in our code here, we're going to say const URL equals new URL. It's going to take our path and our base URL. And now we are able to add a search to it, which is going to be our query. And here, we're now able to say url.href, and that's going to give us the full query that we need. And what you could do, you could console log it to see what's going on. We are also going to go ahead and console log the data that we're getting here. So refreshing our front end, obviously visually we're not going to see anything, but under the hood we are making our request, and notice how we're getting our data. And if we take a look at our console logs, we're getting our title, description, our blocks. By the way, did you know this little trick? If you want to console log all the items, you could do console dir, and you could pass a flag of depth of null. And let's refresh again. And notice now we're getting our complete console of all the things we're getting. We're getting our title, description, we're getting our blocks, we're getting our headings, subheadings, our image, and our link. Now that we know that we're getting our data, I want to show you one quality of life improvement. Notice how we have data and then attributes. And if this was any additional nested data that we have here, is getting data and attributes. And as the response get bigger, you're going to have a lot of these data and attribute responses. So let's add a utility function that flattens this response and makes it easier in the next video. You will be able to find this code snippet in the accompanying blog post that you'll find as the first link in the description. Go ahead and copy the flatten attributes data function, and we're going to go ahead, add it to our utils.ts folder in our code. So let's navigate to lib, utils, and let's go ahead and add our flatten attributes function. Now let's go ahead and use this function. So inside our page.tsx file, here we're going to say const flatten data, and we're going to use our flatten attributes data function. So make sure we import it. Import, and it's going to come from our lib.utils. And we could probably use the @ sign here. Perfect. And make sure you spell const correctly. And we're going to console log our flattened data to see the changes. And instead of data, we're going to return our flattened data. And here you could see our response. We get our ID, title, description, and a much more flattened usable response where we're missing the data and attributes and just getting the data. Now, if you go look at your front end, now it's complaining because we need to update our front end code to reflect the changes that we made. So here, instead of doing Strapi data attributes, we just able to use our Strapi data. So now if we refresh, we're still getting our data, but it's just much nicer. Now, finally, let's create a hero section component. So you don't have to watch me type the code on screen, you could go ahead to the article that I already prepared to complement this video and go to the hero section, component section, and find the code snippet and go ahead and copy it. Inside our project, we're going to go to our components folder. We're going to create a new folder. We're going to call it custom. And inside here, we're going to make a new file called hero section.tsx. Go ahead and paste in the code. Once everything is pasted, you're going to see that we're still not using Next.js image, which we'll do in the next video. We are hard coding all the data, but first, let's just see if we could show this component to the screen. Inside our page.tsx file, so before adding the components, let's destructure our blocks, are the items that we're getting, and we're going to replace this with our new hero section component, which is going to get the first entry from the blocks. And let's remove this styling. Perfect. So now if we refresh our application, we see our hard-coded image, our summary of your videos, our subheading, and our login button. So now let's go inside our hero section component and make sure that we're adding the proper data. But before we do that, let's create an interface for our hero section props so we know what the structure of our data looks like. We're going to say data, and we know from our response, our blocks data has an ID, component, heading, subheading, image, and link. So let's go ahead and add those. So we're going to say ID is a number. Then we have our component, which is a string. Then we have our heading, which is a string. Then we have our subheading, which is a string. Then we have our image. Let's make another interface. And we're going to say image props. Our image has an ID, which is a number. Our URL, which is a string. And alternative text as a string. So inside here, we're going to say image equals image props. And then finally, we have our interface for link props. And eventually, we'll be able to move this out if these types are going to be shared in other places. But for now, we're just going to do everything here. And we have ID, which is a number. And command copilot, we didn't call it label. We called it text, which is a string. And let's add it here. Link. And it's going to be our link props. And finally, let's replace here. Read only hero section props. And now we could destructure our data. We're going to say const heading, sub, image, and links. So we're going to come back to the image in just a second. But here I'm going to do heading. Here I'm going to do subheading for link. This is going to be link text. And this is going to be link URL. So now if we take a look at our hero section, notice we have Epic Next, you are all awesome, login, and that's coming from our Strapi application. So finally, let's fix the image here. So let's continue working. And one first thing I want to show you here, if I console log that image, notice that we're just getting the second portion of our URL, but we're not getting our base URL. We're going to come back to this later, but for now, we're just going to hard code it by saying our image URL is going to be our local project base URL, and let's append our image.url to it. And now we're able to replace our source with the image URL here. Now, if you take a look at the project, it looks atrocious because I used an image of our project image. So let's replace that. So in Strapi here under images, I'm going to delete that and I'm going to add another image. Let's add more assets, browse files. I'm just going to use a random photo that I have here. Click open, click upload, finish, save. And now when we go back to our application and refresh, what the heck? It's not working. What is the problem? By default, your Next application is going to cache your data. You could learn more about in its docs. But if we scroll down, we could actually opt out of caching. And we're going to do that while in development mode. So what we're able to do, we're able to pass cache no store prop, which is going to fix this. In the future, when we deploy our application, we're going to have a webhook that's going to fire every time we update our content on Strapi and redeploy our application, especially for the content that is statically built. But in the meantime, in our page.tsx file, we are going to go ahead into our fetch, and we're going to pass the following argument. So now if we take a look, notice we have our new image and everything's working as expected. Oh my gosh, we're getting our hero section showing up in our application. We still have so much to cover. Before building out our features section that we'll do in the next video, we're going to take a look how to work with the Next.js image component. And we're also going to create our own Strapi image component to make working with Strapi images much easier. After we build out our features section, we're also going to build out our top navigation and our footer. So I'm excited to see you in the next video. If you like what we do here, feel free to hit the like button, subscribe, or even share this video. And don't forget, these videos come with a supplementary blog post that is the first link in the description below. And more importantly, I don't know if you knew, we hang out at Discord Monday through Friday, 12:30 p.m. CST time. So if you have any questions or just want to stop by and say hello, definitely do that. But with that being said, I'll see you in the next video.